Welcome everybody to our very first Montessori Leaders and Managers meeting. Thank you, Michelle, for giving us the inspiration and being willing to share your knowledge with the Montessori community. If you have ever participated in any of the webinars or work that Michelle has done for the Montessori community, you will know that she always prepares a PowerPoint which has got more information that we potentially can cover in the hour that we have for the webinar. So I will pass over to Michelle straight away and let her get on with sharing her PowerPoint with you, which will be provided for you, link to it tomorrow with the recording, because it's important that whatever you learn tonight, you will share with your staff.
What I've tried to do today is when I've put the PowerPoint together, I've tried to create one that you can all share very easily with your teams without having to change anything if you don't want to. But again, if you want to, you can. So I've come very much from a perspective of this is all of us together. This isn't me just sharing my knowledge with you. This is giving you opportunity to then share with your teams in your settings and things. So the idea for this came from, we just sort of said we were getting a bit more, and then Barbara and I were talking a few weeks ago and suddenly realised that there was lots of press out there about the EYFS, about changes that were going to need to happen, what we were going to do about it, and all the rest of it. And we decided, suddenly sort of thought, actually, as a Montessori community, we don't need to panic. And we wanted to start getting that message out as early as possible that you've already got this, girls, so don't worry about it too much. So today is about looking at the EYFS, looking at a little bit, only a small bit, at the changes that are going to take place in September, but looking more productively and more positively at what we can do and what you can do in your settings from September, but also to start working with your teams now to calm things down. So really, I'm seeing today as a starting point. We will do more of this, hopefully going through the year to help you prepare even more as we learn more and as we get to know more from the early adopters and the different schools that are already participating. So, so as I said, it's about looking forwards. It's about identifying our strengths. We've all got those strengths in our Montessori practice, but we're just not very good at shouting about them and recognizing them because we just so naturally go along the path of what we believe in here is so right for children. So we just need to get that message out there and out to our teams and just realize that actually we don't need to change. We need to adapt a little bit maybe, and some of you will need to review your practices a bit in the classroom, but effectively we don't need to change. So what has changed from the government? So the DfE basically published a revised statutory EYFS early adopter framework. And I think the clue is in the early adopter title. It's nothing for us to worry about at the moment, but it will be implemented fully from September 2021. They've also, alongside this, written a non-statutory development matters, just to give us time to get used to that. But again, we're kind of going to ask to sideline that for a bit. We'll come back to that at a later date when we're more confident in the documents going forward. But what we're going to do today is just to look a little bit at the changes that are coming in the actual statutory EYFS and how we can, going forward, easily overcome those and look at the practice that we're already doing in our nurseries and our schools. So I've put this health warning. This does come with a health warning, and it's really important to remember that these changes do not come into effect until 2021. There is a lot of scaremongering going on out there in social media, through all these consultancy companies that are advertising all over Facebook that you need to know about it, you need to make all these changes. So this is a health warning. Don't panic, don't worry. It's not till September. We've got plenty of time. It gives us a lot of time to engage, to get to know what we're doing and to learn more and reflect on how we can evidence the Montessori philosophy and how it enables us to meet the requirements. So, sorry, this is a very busy slide, and I hate doing busy slides normally, but because I wanted to make this so you could share it with your teams, I wanted to get everything in that I could. So I'm not going to talk through these in a huge amount of detail, but there are basic changes that are happening to the early learning goals. And the reason I've put these in is just for you to remind your teams that the clue, the early learning goals, are an element that we do not need to look at achieving in nursery. So a majority of the changes that are happening more affect the primary level. And I saw Dawn is in here somewhere, and that these brave people that have got their primary schools that will be looking at the profile. It more affects that side of things. But the main changes are on communication and language, maths, a little bit of understanding of the world, expressive arts and designs. But these, because it's all being run through the early adopter system, these could change again. So it's still not written in stone at the minute. But I wanted to just put these up so you can read them in your own time and have a look at them and then share them with your teams, because they're written down for you. You haven't got to go out and find it for yourself. And again, just to remind you that as the profile says, the early learning goals are what are assessed at the end of the reception year. So that's, I think we've got to keep that very much in our minds. We're working with the more precious age group, the very youngest of our community. So let the reception teachers worry about the early learning goals and ticking those off. But also a little bit of a reminder that it's not a curriculum and it's not a tick list. It's just there as a guide for people to use. So just in just a tiny little bit more detail from an educational perspective, and changes that are going to happen. So PSED at the moment will include additional information on self-care and healthy eating. Physical development will be strengthened to include what they call a greater focus on development from birth to reception, on a link between fine and gross motor skills. Literacy is going to include a stronger emphasis on literacy learning and the link between language comprehension and then later on reading and writing. Maths will include a greater detail on spatial reasoning, measure, and the early maths and how children foster a love of maths. So that bit, I love that, how children foster a love of maths. That's where our real strengths will come in. Expressive arts and design will include a wide variety of ways that children can develop their creative skills. And communication language program basically is going to remain roughly as they've proposed it. And I just picked up these two little quirks because I think they are things that are being picked up quite a lot on social media at the moment. So exceeding judgment, they're going to remove exceeding judgment from the profile. I think their reasoning behind this is to say it will free up teachers' time. But, you know, effectively will still be expected to continue to identify the children that need to be stretched, but there won't be a label as such put on it. And then oral health. This one, I don't know if many of you spend a lot of time on social media, but this has really made me laugh on the social media platform of all these discussions of these companies are now producing toothbrush trains. I don't know whether you've all seen them, for all the children to have toothbrushes now in the settings so that they can clean their teeth a million times a day. So taking things sort of really to the excess, but it is something that is detailed about promoting good oral health of children. And basically on an individual basis, with all of these, the early learning goals and with the changes, we've all got to find a way how we're going to meet the requirements. But what's really interesting is in the document, it actually says in the oral health section that this will not be required to be assessed. So we haven't got to actually assess the children cleaning their teeth. So that's really good. So what's not included is, I think, things that we need to be careful of. I think we've got to be, that's why I want to look forward and look at how we can use what we do on an everyday basis and not change what we do, because things like work with shapes and measures are going, but it doesn't mean that we don't do it. You know, our sensorial, as Barbara has said, our sensorial areas meet so much more than is going to be included in the early learning and in the new framework, that we need to keep making sure that we do that and keep our holistic approach going, and to, you know, support the children, giving them all the tools they need, as we all know, through the use of the favourable environment. So Barbara, shall I hand over to you?
Unmute.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I think what I have tried to do with these 3 slides is to really remind you of your Montessori practice and look at the key principles which underpin the EYFS. And we need to make the connections between what we believe is the unique child and what is expected of the unique child in the EYFS. We also need to recognize the importance of the enabling environments and positive relationships. All of this is something that has been embedded in Montessori practice for many, many years. This is simply supporting the principles, and it gives us an opportunity to really shine if we are able to articulate well how we support the unique child, why we care so much about the favorable environment, why we nurture the relationships with our families, because we need to work together. This holy trinity of Montessori will include all sorts of things in the middle, including the learning or development, as well as the work with our community. And I think that in context of what has happened within the last year, in context of all the different initiatives that we have considered, we really need to begin to work with the children and let them think about or we need to think about cosmic education and how it impacts on our practice, how we share these important messages which are part of Montessori's legacy for social justice and for preservation of the earth, and what it really means for the children at nursery school. And fundamentally, it means you have to be the best role model you possibly can. And for this reason, it's really important that you work with your teams. If we are looking about the learning and development, I would really, really encourage you, rather than seeing how the child follows the development matters trajectory in terms of meeting or working towards the learning goals, why don't you focus on the characteristics of effective learning? Why don't you look at the children's capacity to be involved and engaged with the environment so that they can develop their creative thinking and their creativity? Because the characteristics actually give us the framework for education for the 21st century. If you look at developing children's capacity for creativity, problem solving, and creative thinking, you will be giving them gifts for the 21st century, gifts which they will need throughout their whole education and in their working life. So this change in the EYFS gives us a real opportunity to look responsibly at the way how we observe, how we record, and how we share information with parents. May I have the next slide, please, Michelle? I think also that, as Michelle already said, that it is important to recognize that, and some of the critique of the EYFS is in the division that the new EYFS creates between what happens before the reception class and what happens in reception class. From the Montessori point of view, I think this gives us an opportunity to actually feel stronger about our pedagogy and feel more positive about what we are giving to children up to the age of 4, and remembering that if we are trying to develop the whole child, it is not about literacy, it is not about numeracy. It is very much about giving children opportunity to demonstrate their spontaneous engagement with the environment. So thinking about how the environment serves the individual child is really, really important. I think there's one real element of freedom in the Ofsted regulations which relate to the new EYFS, and that's the fact that they will not be tracking the progress of individual children. It gives us an opportunity to really think about what we do with our observations. It will challenge some of your recording systems that you are using. And I hope that you will engage with us in learning about learning stories from New Zealand, where they have found more effective way of celebrating the children's achievements rather than ticking a box and saying, hooray, your child has built the Pink Tower. Building the Pink Tower is an important step in children's development, but parents do not understand it. So you either need to explain what it really means, what is the purpose of the activity, or you need to celebrate how the child has done it. So it also enables us, if we are looking to learning from birth to 4, to strengthen the focus on the prime areas of learning, which are really at the heart of the EYFS and are at the heart of Montessori pedagogy, because they link directly to children's sensitive periods. They look at children's physical development, they look at children's language development, and of course, the personal and social development of the child is absolutely at the heart of what we do with the children. And I would encourage you to join us for the book club this coming Wednesday, because there's some real wisdom in this chapter from the Child and Society, where Montessori talks about the relationship between the individual development of the child and the social development of that child at the same time. They are not seen as two separate things. They are seen as very integral to the whole being of the child. And of course, you cannot do prime areas of learning with young children without actually exploring some aspects of knowledge of the world, because they are interested in animals, they are interested in being outside, they are interested in learning about the environment. And of course, you will give them opportunities to express their ideas through the craft areas, through dancing, through music, and through simply just giving them an opportunity to engage in role play, because play is really the best tool that we have in Montessori settings in getting to know the whole child. Please, may I have the next one, Michelle? Good. Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you. So I come back to this idea of being guided by the children's capacity for spontaneous learning, and that gives you an opportunity to planning in the moment. It effectively looking at what the child enjoys and recording it sensitively so that you can share and celebrate what the child has learned. I think that it's also important. It gives us an opportunity to look at the effectiveness of our environment. I still see that many of the environments simply rely on the Montessori legacy and provide the Montessori activities without much embellishment in order to help the child to develop. And often the Montessori environments look quite tired, because if you use the Pink Tower over and over and over again without painting it, it will not be very appealing. And Montessori tells us that the environment needs to entice the child. So please review and rethink and entice the child to really engage and concentrate and find the levels of normal spontaneous development which all the children deserve. And finally, but not least, is look at the benefits of the freedom within the classroom, because as Montessori tells us so wisely, the freedom is part of the child's capacity for self-discipline. If you really think about self-discipline, there are very, very strong connections with self-regulation as it is perceived today. And we certainly hope to bring you a webinar looking at self-regulation and what it really means in the future. So that's all from me for now, and over to you, Michelle, again. Thank you.
Okay. So one thing we do know is we need to keep reflecting now on our practice. We need to see and learn more about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And what's really important in this element is that we engage with our teams, and we engage, as Barbara said, with the children as well. We know about cosmic education, and we know about how to underpin the principles of the EYFS. We've just got to learn to talk about it, and we've got to learn to evidence that, taking responsibility really for our actions and why we do it. So one step and one way to do that is to start working with our teams and start looking at how you can involve them in coming up with what will be the opportunity to be able to talk about the philosophy and talk about what and why they are doing what you're doing in the class with the children, why you are giving opportunities to the children. So basically taking responsibility for what we're doing. It's not good enough now to go, we're a Montessori setting, you know, that there's a book that does it for us, or you, as an Ofsted inspector, you should understand, or as an outside world, you should understand. We've got to be able to talk about it. We've got to be able to explain why, for example, social justice is important to us, what cosmic education is. And I know we've, you know, all of us went through that when we all did our Montessori exams, or our written exams, or our practicals, where we had to try and make that link between cosmic plan, cosmic education, and what we do in the classroom. But we've got to revisit that now. So as I said to my staff team, this is now our cosmic task this year, is to revisit our understanding of the philosophy, revisit what we're doing in the classroom, revisit the elements of that dynamic triangle, and pull it together so we create our own individual philosophies within our settings. So I've stolen Barbara's words here a little bit from her blog, because I think it's really nice to link the two to show that everything is, we are sort of all working together. But we absolutely do need to take time to study what we need to change, to work together, to tweak and adjust our policies, so your policies, and look at how you're recording, how you're planning, look at what really matters to the children. Why are they in your setting? What are they gaining from it? What are they learning? And it might feel like a huge task, but it's not if you work as a team with everybody together. So that atmosphere of the kindness, respect and trust that comes through in everything that we do in our settings will come through in how you develop going forward, creating almost like a little in-house training system really with your staff, to try and wheedle out of them what they are still carrying with them from their training. So as you all know, I love using Montessori words, and and I've just realised, look, I didn't finish the reference on that one. I will finish that before this goes out. You know, we know that she was ahead of our time, but we have to learn to communicate these sort of words across to people that come into the setting. We need to be able to say to people, we do Montessori because of this, we follow the philosophy because of this, we follow the child because of this. And as Montessori said in her own words, this is education understood as a help to life, an education from birth which feeds a peaceful resolution and unites all in a common aim, attracting them to a single centre. And I think that first sentence basically says everything that we need to offer through meeting the requirements of the EYFS. It helps skills for life, it's an education from birth, and it feeds peaceful revolution and unites us all in a common aim. And I think those are really important words at the minute, particularly now with everything that's going on. And it's where the development matters, not that we want to go there, should be going, you know, to unite it all together as one. So that's why I pulled this out. for you all to share with your teams, because I think it's quite it's a really good solid foundation place to start, to then start building on the mechanical elements of what you're doing in your practice every day. So the Early Years Inspection Handbook currently states that we have to provide a curriculum framework that helps support children to learn and develop. And we've got to assure inspectors when they come in, we've got to ensure people when they come in that we're implementing a curriculum that enables children to progress in the 7 areas of learning. And we do that. We do it naturally every day through creating the enabling environment, as Montessori asked us to, basically. So we need to be able to then communicate that even more. And that's where the inspection chain is changing a little bit, because they are asking us to create our own philosophy. And we haven't got to do that, because Montessori did that. Over 100 years ago, she wrote this amazing philosophy, this amazing pedagogy, which can support our practice. So we know child development hasn't changed. They still need the same opportunities that they've always needed to follow their own innate path of development. So we've just got to find a way to make sure that we are providing that whole cosmic education that basically fits with your cultural capital, and we continue to offer opportunities of awe and wonder in the classroom. And sort of going back a bit to what Barbara was saying earlier about making sure our settings always look beautiful for the children. And again, involve the children in creating those environments. There's no reason why they can't be part of that whole process. We've got to continue to work with them to then provide them with the knowledge and the skills that they need for their future learning as it goes. And I think it's about remembering that the framework is just a guide. I think in the past, we've certainly got ourselves all a bit tied up in making sure that we do what the EYFS said, whereas I think we are getting more and more confident in being able to say, actually, this is what our philosophy is. This is what we do. This is the heart of our enabling environment. This is what supports the unique child in their development. And so long as you're providing an environment that's responsive to the children's needs, you're going to be able to talk to whoever you need to talk about where the children are and where and how they're progressing. So there isn't a single way, and none of us will have a Montessori setting or a Montessori environment that's exactly the same. And we shouldn't do, because the staff that work in it are different and unique. The children that access it are different and unique. So if it's meeting the environments, you will have your own way of achieving, creating your own philosophy. But just remembering that we still need to provide what we need to do to increase the skill base for those children. And this quote, I quite often use this quote because it was one of the first ones I ever picked up when I first did my Montessori training. And I think it was after when I did my first little delivery thing to my team of staff, which is now 24 years ago, I worked out the other day when I did my first ever introduction to all my first team, is that times have changed and they do keep changing. Science is progressing and so must we. And I think it's so important for us to use what Montessori wrote about, to use her philosophy as a foundation, but remembering that times have changed and we have to move with those times as well. And I think for me, that is a beauty of the Montessori philosophy, is because it was about creating peace, unity, social justice, because of all of the elements that she put into that foundation, it is a malleable movement that's going to work with us and with the children to create those potentialities which she talks about here. And I think what is going to become our foundation going forward now is our skill of observation. So one thing that our Montessori training gave us, and I think one thing that is probably the most important element that we should be sharing with our teams and that we should be working with our staff, is the power of observation. And And we keep talking about going back to our roots of Montessori. Well, one of the most important elements of those roots is the power of observation, whether it's a narrative observation, whether it's a checklist, whether it's a curve of work, whether it's tracking, drawing on new learning from people, for example, using the Leuven scales. All of those things are what is going to build your knowledge now of the child. And we're way ahead of the game because of our training. We're way ahead of the game in being able to do and take and make really good observations of children. So if you don't have time to do anything else with your teams, other than deliver just what the changes are, start doing more work on them, on their observation skills, and take yourselves back to sitting back and taking time to watch the children and learn from the children, and try and get ourselves away from the getting so many observations in a week on the system so the parents can see lots of observations. It's about getting that quality observation in now rather than the quantity of observations, so that we can talk about our understanding of the children and how we're following the children. So we've been promised, haven't we, Barbara? We've been promised there's no more paperwork, that the paperwork's going to go, but we will all get ourselves tied up in paperwork because we are Montessorians and we like to do everything very well, very precisely, and know exactly where we're going. So I'd love to sit here and go, there's going to be no more paperwork, but I know even with my teams, they're all going, oh, we do need to have a bit of paperwork. So you just need to find a level now of where and what you're going to write down. I know loads of us are using online systems. We're still going to need them because IT and the way things are going, and I'm sure they will all start adapting to meet our needs going forward. But, you know, if we limit our paperwork and start getting our staff to communicate and talk, they can talk the observation, they can talk the knowledge, they can explain what's happening with the children. And then you don't get this fixed picture all the time, you get this ever moving picture from the staff about the children. So just ensure that your teams can talk about it, and that takes practice. And that's where we come in and where management comes in. So we still all will be doing our appraisals, we'll all be doing our peer-on-peer observations, we'll be doing all of those things that are required of us. But what we need to do is make sure within that we try and include practice of talking to the staff, practice of the staff talking to us and explaining what they're doing, showing us what they've seen in something that they're doing. So practice all of those learning stories that we're going to talk about, and Barbara and the webinars are going to talk about from New Zealand. That's part of all what they do, is the talking about what's happening with the children. We don't need to keep writing it down in very quick fix ways. So, you know, the foundation of education is based on the joy of the child and accomplishing great things for their age. The satisfaction of the child is to give a maximum effort to the task in hand through a well-directed activity. So if you think, our environments already do that. So we're already, hopefully, you are understanding the children, so you're giving them the children, so you're giving them that satisfaction and ensuring the consistent and the progress and the happiness of each individual child in your settings. So it's really important that we as a team, you as a team, us supporting you, hopefully behind, that we work together to show how we do this and how through this, as Montessori says, the strength, the mind and the body, we help the children acquire the experience and then eventually the freedom that they need to move on in society and move on in their learning. And to do that, we need to think differently about how children progress. We need to get away from these overcomplicated systems. We need to make, I mean, I've put in here about baffle parents. We need to simplify how we talk to parents and how we explain what we do. We need to keep it simple. And that's where, again, our training of the staff comes in. So working with our teams, getting them to talk to us about it. I know certainly from my own experiences, quite often I write a lecture or whatever and I'm writing it down and I don't really 100% understand what I've written until I talk about it. And then as you're talking about it, your brain computes and you start realizing, actually, I do know this, I can talk about it and I do understand. And Montessori gave us an amazing opportunity and she gave us fantastic roots. And that's what they are. So trees, anything in nature, in the winter, and we're now in the winter, everything goes back to sleep, dies down a little bit, giving us the opportunity to regrow it. And that's now where we're going to start doing. So we've now got this opportunity. The EYFS is changing. I'm looking at it from perspective that it's giving us opportunity now to be who we really are and who we want to be. So let's make it work for us and use this amazing foundation that she's given to show that we can do what we need to do without having too many tick boxes and too much guidance from the EYFS. So children are going to holistically develop whatever we do. So let's just give them the opportunity to do it with us really behind them and helping them. So just a little reminder that now is a time for reflection. Now is the time to sit quietly and observe and watch your settings, observe and watch your staff and see how they're all working. And then instead of going in and telling them what we need to do, ask them then how they think it's going. So we've set up a little training program this year that's going to run over the whole year. And every so often we're looking at each element of the dynamic triangle and we're making links to cosmic education, and each member of staff is writing little reports for us, and from that we're going to pull together their understanding and the philosophy. And it's been really interesting process to do. So for example, last Friday I just gave a little scenario that I sent out to all the staff and asked them to interpret it, reflect on the situation that happened, interpret it. And even I was reading some of them today, what some of the staff have come back with has been really intuitive. And I've been going, oh, I never knew that so-and-so could understand it in that way. So use your staff and use their understanding, because they're the ones that we can learn from. And that's why we employ them, isn't it? Because hopefully they all know better than us and understand more than us. So really just to sort of bring us to a little bit of a close before we answer questions, because I can't see the chat box, so I don't know if there's anything in there at all. Remember, from this point on, we've got to start developing our own practice. We've got to develop our own philosophy using our Montessori roots, but being able to talk about it. And remember, at the moment, every day is a new beginning. So we're going to have new experiences every day. And I'm going to read this one fully because I think it's, oh, don't know what I've done there. Well, there we go. I repeat and I insist, I did not wish to originate a method of education, nor am I the author of a method of education. This is not a method of education like other methods, but it is the beginning of something which must grow and which is in no way bound to any personality that may appear as the author, but it is solely allied to the human beings who develop in freedom. It's a history of liberty and not the recital of any individual's thoughts. And I think for us, that's going to be one of our statements that starts the beginning of our whole new curriculum that we're developing in our classrooms, because we are moving, children are changing, and our children are going through a bigger change than ever at the minute. And we really don't know what's going to come out the other side. So hopefully you'll find something useful in there that you can talk about with your teams. Please feel free to share, change, do whatever you like when you get the PowerPoint, because what we really want is for these sessions to be something that you can take away with you and use to support what you're doing in the classroom. Barbara?
Thank you very much, Michelle. It was a whistle tour of the Montessori approach in context of the EYFS. I hope that we will be able to revisit and work on some of the themes. I love the closing quote. I particularly love the idea that we must grow. We mustn't be cast in stone of the day when we did our practical assessment and we left college. All of you have learned so much more about children, from their parents, and from your teams. And it is really, really important that we continue to learn together as a community in order to demonstrate to the world that Montessori education continues to be relevant and offers opportunities for children which are far beyond any government policy or procedure, because it is the children who are the unique individuals and who are the promise of the future. And we are privileged to be part of the early journey, a very important journey which cannot be taken away from them. So thank you very much, Michelle. We are happy to take any questions, but perhaps before we go into the questions, we hope to also look at COVID in our next meeting in November, and it would be really, really helpful if you used our Facebook page, which we have developed, our Facebook group, which we have developed for leaders and managers, to put your questions or your comments about COVID, because it needs to respond to what is happening in the community at the time when we do the webinar. So will not be the same as it would have been today, because who knows what will happen in a month's time. That's one of the things about the current situation, that it tests our flexibility on every front, not only working with children, but also with parents and with our teams and within our community. So please feel free to ask questions, but you can also use the Facebook group to ask questions after the webinar, because there was so much information you may want to reflect and think about it.
One thing that has come up privately is that someone's asked, Michelle, when you're referring to the dynamic triangle, we presume you are talking about the adult, the child, and the environment. Just clarifying that, yeah?
Yes.
Super.
Yes. Sorry,
and
that's my language use.
In recent reading, Montessori referred to those three elements as the Trinity, which is really also interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it just gives us a focus, and what we've done in our settings is actually, even our appraisal system is set around the dynamic triangle. So, and our feedback that we give every week, and the messages that we give out to staff, and when we do looking at the whole environment, we always pick, here's a target, or here's something we need to look at, or here's something we need to reflect on with regards to the child, with regards to the environment, and with regards to the adult. So we try and keep that Trinity, I'm going to steal that one now, Barbara, we're going to keep that Trinity, running together, because the three, have to work in unity.
And the three will enclose, the thing that comes in the middle will be the learning and development, or the community, and that both of those are kind of governed by the whole holistic development of the children, and also by a cosmic task of providing or educating children for the future.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, as Barbara said, I think we're hoping to pick different themes out as we go over the year, as we learn more. So, today was more about just sort of saying to everybody, don't panic, just, start reflecting on what you're doing in the classroom now, and that will really set you up ready for any changes that are to come.
I really like what Marion, Barbara, what Marion also has written, which is that by acting together as a community and by supporting each other, we can really look ahead and move forwards, as you are encouraging also, Michelle. And I think that's right. And if we can just all connect and keep talking to each other and keep supporting each other, that's lovely.
And after all, everything about cosmic education is about evolution, or is underpinned by evolution. So Marianne's comment, we must be brave. Things will always change. We must be brave and challenge ourselves. That's probably the most powerful message we can share with you as we go forward on this journey together.
Absolutely. I don't know, Barbara, if you want to talk to Sarah's comment in the chat about...
Yes, so at the moment there's a huge debate again about the tension between the development methods as developed by Julien Grenier and what we believe could be good practice for children. I think that some of the difficulty or some of the criticism of the new development methods is that it is in the wish to become easier for practitioners used, it has become oversimplistic. And as you know, there is nothing simplistic about our work with young children. We need to be so well informed and so flexible in interpretation. We are certainly contributing towards an alternative version of development methods, which I hope will be a really, really useful document for all of us. The plan is to publish it by the spring, so it would give us 6 months to reflect on and perhaps use the alternative version of the development methods in order to really embed Montessori practice within that document. The thing about development methods is that it is non-statutory. It is a guidance. It is a tool to help practitioners. The EYFS will be cast in stone. That will be what you will be required to deliver. But how you do it, why you do it, and what you do will be left to you. And that's why it is such an important time for us to reflect on our Montessori practice and ensure that the Montessori message is really strong in everything that we do and articulated with real skill so that you make the relevant connections with the EYFS, yet remain strong and powerful and demonstrate your knowledge of children and of the values that we hold so close to our hearts. And I think on that one, we need to say good night, and we'll see you in a month's time or thereabout. We will have another, as I said, we have another session planned for November. And please do engage with our blogs, with our newsletters. We try to share so much information from which each one of you should be able to find something that is relevant to you, because we do appreciate that each one of us is on our individual journey whilst we are part of this global or almost global journey that we are sharing all together. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and engage, talk to each other and talk to us. Good night, everybody. And thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Wendelin.
Good night.